Hello, my name's Narendran, the host of Master of Your Crafts podcast, learning from leaders who are continuously inspired, passionate, and driven to align with their soul purpose, sharing their gifts to bring healing to others. The music is composed by Rebecca Everett. Today is episode number 90, and I'll be talking to Greg Wieting, a healer who helped leaders and entrepreneurs heal the anxiety, depression, chronic pain, and trauma they can't think or talk their way out of. He is the founder of PRISMA, a framework overlaying trauma, neuroscience, and energy medicine with their somatic and mindfulness-based practices. He developed this while healing his own anxiety, depression, and chronic pain rooted in trauma. This included unraveling a severe spinal curvature and now standing 3 inches taller today. Over the last 2 decades, Greg has helped thousands heal through his one-on-one practice and has certified hundreds of healthcare professionals in his methodology. His new online course and community now makes healing practical and accessible to all. Hello and welcome to Greg. How are you, Greg?
I'm great. Thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I came across your profile and I brought a ton of curiosity with all that you bring and your perspective of not only mental health, but on the healing process in itself too. Can you share a little bit about your unique perspective of not only transformation, but the healing process as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I find we're so conditioned to kind of see a symptom and want to chase, treat, or suppress the symptom, or almost fight against it as if the symptom is the enemy. And my orientation to healing is the symptom is a really significant message from our body, and it's an opportunity to just become more present to ourselves and to better understand our needs. And so, you know, I look at the symptoms, and so rather than suppressing symptoms, my approach to healing is helping the body further express, like, well, what's beneath that? Um, and I think symptoms are just showing us where there's some patterns of stagnation and you know, we're looking to create movement. And so I feel health is movement, disease, illness is stagnation. And so, yeah, it's a very different approach, and that stagnation is a lot of noise, where healing is breaking up the noise, not just putting a band-aid over it.
But the Band-Aid has been such a formula that's been positioned and conditioned for us to use. Let's say, for instance, even the healthcare system, like the physical body healthcare system, often is very much a Band-Aid approach, right?
Yeah. And and that's what we've been offered. And growing up, I had chronic ear infections, and I all I wanted to do was just take some medicine to get better. And so I get it,
Mm,
right? Like
okay.
when we're in pain, we want relief from that pain, but those ear infections were chronic. And
Yeah.
so I wasn't really getting to what was beneath all of that, right? And so yeah, my approach working with energy medicine, I love to think of the body as a symphony orchestra. And,
Mm,
you know, all of our muscles and tissues and cells and the organs and our hormones and our emotions and our beliefs and our memories are all parts of that symphony.
yeah.
And when they're in harmony, there is this beautiful music and there is a harmony. Um, and you know, because of stress, because of trauma, because of environmental influences, hereditary influences, um, you know, the communication and the harmony between these different parts starts to break down. You know, the nervous system gets short-circuited. So
Yeah.
then we start to, you know, feel rather split and fragmented within ourselves. And that's when, instead of this musicality of being and wholeness, we're starting to create a lot of noise. Um, and so I think healing is really understanding how to break up the noise, create more of that harmonic resonance, which actually has very little to do with the symptom, right? So even though I help people heal trauma, I
Mhm.
actually am not really focused on the trauma. I'm more focused on restoring their body's innate wisdom so they have
Mm.
their own capacity to heal the trauma, often without us ever having to, you know, think or talk about it.
Such a beautiful analogy there. I love that. The body just be in alignment and create this symphony so it is on balance, so we can truly feel and express all the tones that we embody as human beings, right? Or as spiritual beings. We have such an opportunity to embody all of those. And the analogy and the visual that you create is a beautiful way of looking at how, when an emotion arises, it arises for a reason to showcase a harmonic that
Yeah,
is in resonance with our physical body. So we'll feel it in certain parts of our body.
and that harmonic, I mean, there's an intelligence to it, right? And
Mhm.
so it often is, yeah, wanting our attention because there's perhaps a message within that harmonic, within that emotion that, you know, is helping to point us to particularly or getting a particular need met, to
Absolutely.
understanding a certain part of ourselves. And yeah, when you use the word tone, it's like, how many tones have we been performing, or how many tones have we hidden, um,
Mhm.
around, you know, getting our needs met in a world that often, you know, the imprint of trauma is going to organize us around a fear of survival, right? And a
Yeah.
lack of safety, a lack of psychological safety and trust within ourselves, within the world.
Yeah.
So, you know, that full expression of our tonality gets muted and gets limited. And it's reclaiming that, right? Um, and that expression is unique for each of us. So what that wholeness, what that harmony expresses, you know, we each have our own song.
Yeah. And it's so important to recognize what that is, because we're not all cookie cutters, right? We're not all built and designed to look and feel and sound the same. We have our own unique vibrational frequency that lends specifically to a soul, a spirit, and human form. And I think that is a beautiful gift.
Yeah. You know, I often am helping folks kind of map the journey from pain to purpose. And
Mhm.
I often think, you know, and I think purpose has become kind of a trendy buzzword
Mhm.
as of late. And I think a lot of us are busy looking for purpose outside of ourselves. And, you know, we're then not taking into account, yeah, what that unique expression of purpose is for us. And I think healing helps us kind of locate what is intrinsic, you know, within us, which is more in alignment and true, which is, you know, I look at purpose as emanating from a place of being, you know, from our
Mhm.
presence. So it's not so much what we do, but how we do it and who we are in
Mm.
in the doing. And no one can have the presence we have, right? That is our unique
Yeah,
offering in the world.
yeah. And what a beautiful gift that is often overlooked. And yeah, we don't get to embrace that. What are some of your attributes that you have learned to bring all of these insights and awareness and gifts in alignment for you that brings you to the purpose of you doing what you're doing.
Yeah. You know, neuroplasticity, neuroscience is a big piece around how do we locate enough safety to then, um, help to rewire the brain, help to repattern
Yeah.
neural pathways.
Yeah.
Our imagination creates the structure of our brain, which then is really creating the structure of our lives. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and the imprint and the lie of trauma often tells us we can't, tells us we're
Mm-hmm.
separate, so there's then an entire sense of self organized around alienation. And, I think the truth of healing is a possibility consciousness, right? So, and the mindfulness piece there is then a reorientation from the pain body to possibility, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so we often will have a fixed identity around, these adverse experiences in life. And how do we zoom out and, you know, have a more expansive view of who we are, which is not this fixed identity that has often been, calcified and imprinted upon by trauma and stress and difficult experience. And so, yeah, the mindfulness based practices and the neuroplasticity really help us kind of reimagine what's possible and to let go of these fixed notions of self.
Mm-hmm. So, what was it that you had gained and really utilized in harnessing this gift and this craft of healing and supporting others through their healing journey? What are some of those main attributes that you have harnessed?
Well, it's probably helpful just to share some of my own journey. I came to healing not really knowing that this world of healing was even an option. I used to live with really severe chronic pain, anxiety, and depression. I had a really severe curve in my spine. Um, and so I was introduced to energy medicine and then mindfulness and somatics and, all of these healing
Mm-hmm.
practices, um, kind of through serendipity.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, started to experience this unraveling of my spine and started to then kind of unearth like stored patterns of trauma and the limiting beliefs and behaviors that were organized around that trauma. And that also began to unravel, right? I'm 3 inches taller today than I was 25 years ago. There's no
Wow.
longer, chronic pain or depression. But, prior to being introduced to this first through a friend, I was steps away from, antidepressants and pain meds. And
Mm-hmm.
so having discovered all of these pieces, it's really just been my own lived experience that, then I kind of just started to share different practices. I lived in India for 8 months and then I was trained to facilitate meditation. So then kind of the role of teacher kind of fell into my lap again, kind of
Yeah.
through serendipity. So then when I returned to the States, I just kind of continued that thread and, kind of like following breadcrumbs, just,
Mm-hmm.
one teacher leads to another, one practice and methodology led to the next. And, really just so much passion. Once I kind of had moved through so much of my own pain, I kind of thought, who am I not to share this? And then in the last 5 years, it's like, okay, now how do I reverse engineer that and kind of put it into, a meaningful framework that makes healing accessible and relevant for others?
What do you believe is your calling?
Yeah, I like to, I kind of am always just echoing the prayer like, may I be guided so I can be
Mm.
in service to the highest good. And so, right now that is to continue to share this body of work. And, I'm really compelled to, get healing, actually make it as accessible as possible. So to get it into the hands and the hearts of anyone and everyone suffering. I am very compelled to work with leaders. Just I feel in leadership positions, we have a unique opportunity to either perpetuate cycles of harm or heal cycles of harm.
Yeah.
And so I think to be a leader is to be a vessel of healing. But I actually have I reached out to an organization this week, really compelled to get healing into the prison systems. I came from the world of activism, so I always have, this social justice kind of bent to me. So I really want to make this accessible to LGBTQ and people of
Right.
color and, um, you know, marginalized identities that might not otherwise have access. So really wanting to mainstream healing, right? Where,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, I had never heard of energy medicine until I had stumbled upon it. And if I had heard about it, I probably could have saved myself, a decade's worth of suffering if I had gotten my hands on the right tools sooner. Um,
Hmm.
and and also I feel that, my calling is evolving, right? I feel as I am kind of finding a way to make this work more accessible, in a way that can also free up more space for my own creativity and then to kind of give back in the world of activism. So
Yeah.
for me, creativity, activism, and healing are really linked. And so, um, yeah, that's those are big pieces for me.
And they're beautiful pieces that work so well synergistically in many different facets, not only perhaps on a personal level to be able to create something and formulate, and that nurturing aspect of creativity of all that that brings, but also the healing component of it, of something that needs more nurturing and needs more of that compassion and love, but to the activism element of not only what's going on in the world, but the inner parts of yourself, possibly, because we've all been on that journey. I still have little parts of myself that are looking to get some airtime or to be seen, be visible. Those are all components of not only our internal self, but our external self too. So I love how you're bringing all of those pieces together, and how ultimately, when we're on our own growth and we're on our own journey, we step further and further into that empowered space, feeling more comfortable, feeling more confident, and feeling more powerful to own the skills that we have gained through our own pain and trauma.
And for me, the link between those three too is really a path of storytelling and right, like reimagining what's possible. And I think art, activism, and healing share that quality of, we see the possibility of a different future, and the art can inspire that, the
Yeah,
activism can, help create that in the world, and then the healing is how we kind of articulate that, internally, right? So,
yeah,
yeah, kind of this overlay of kind of the inner and outer experience and helping them pattern match, right? I feel like there's often a lack of alignment between inner and outer world, and that lack of congruency, we'll either make a big mess of things or we just won't, be fulfilling on our mission or our purpose. Um,
that's right.
and again, that's a journey, that's a discovery and a growth. And I think, the healing practice helps us attune to ourselves
Yeah.
moment to moment because that can evolve and change. Our values can, I think there's core values that likely don't change, but certain values I think do evolve over time, depending on
Mm-hmm.
the phase of life we're in. Certain things take
Mm-hmm.
on more resonance and more importance for us.
Absolutely. But it's also based on one's openness and readiness to a healing. I'm a great believer that whatever we need will be presented to us, providing we're open. You had gone through a chronic health crisis, if I may say, for 10 years. And for you to be presented the solutions that you're offering today, 5 years ago within that journey, or 10 years ago at the tipping point of that journey, maybe you wouldn't have seen it because there would have had to be a whole nother journey of possible, I want to say, struggle, pain, or strife, or whatever, for you to go, okay, now I've reached my tipping point. Now I'm open to more possibilities. And I think that is potentially a natural process that we all have to go through.
Yeah, when I speak to clients and students, or folks that are considering working with me, it really is a conversation about kind of a cost payoff analysis, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of our survival strategies that now are creating the pain we're in helped us get where we are today, right? And
Yeah.
so there's both wanting to honor these strategies and these mechanisms, but they, what saved us, years ago may be, very detrimental to us today. And
Yeah.
yeah, that cost payoff analysis, could be a, a, a balancing act of how to, create a new template, create a new scaffolding of what's possible to then be able to let go of the old. And that could be a tenuous process, and as healing can be, and I think healing is also kind of striking that balance of the pain we're motivated to get out of,
Mhm.
which is important. That'll often get us to a healing practice, but I don't think that'll sustain the healing practice. It's then we need to orient to what we're inspired to move towards, right? So I
Right.
like the idea of motivation for the sprint and inspiration for the marathon.
Yeah, there needs to be a motivation to get through what needs to happen. With all that you've learned and everything that you've gone through personally and professionally, what do you now believe about yourself? And does it define who you've become at this moment of time?
I think we're far more capable than we give ourselves credit for. Um, and if I just kind of look back at my life, just the dreams and the goals I've set for myself, I think we can almost limit ourselves with goals and dreams. And I think dreaming and goal setting is important and valuable, but then not to get attached to that, because, we set goals and dreams based on, the awareness we have of ourselves in that moment. And if we're committed to a growth path, that continues to evolve. And so, um, yeah, I just love being able to continue to like kind of refresh and update kind of my awareness of myself and what's possible. Yeah, breaking through upper limits. I like to be kind of the perpetual student, and
Mhm.
um, I think it's easy to feel comfortable once we've, landed in a certain place of understanding, within ourselves. And that's when it's really important, I think, to challenge ourselves to kind of continue to explore, and to continue to challenge ourselves. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and that wasn't always, the earlier version of me organized around pain and trauma. um, that that mindset would feel very threatening. All I wanted was to have a fixed and stable sense of myself, and that's it. And it's like,
Mhm.
no, that's a big piece of my work today, like the sense of identity that is really evolving. And the sense of impermanence and change, right?
Mhm.
But I think oftentimes trauma will have a very narrow, fixed sense of who we are. And as limiting as that may be, it's also comfortable because we can hold on to it. And yeah, just a commitment to growth, a commitment to the unfolding.
Yeah. Yeah. Even within those stages of cycle that you talk about, because there's a budding and a growth process. of, I'm learning something new. This is exciting. Oh my gosh, let me consume anything and everything that I have on this topic. And then you get into the digestion stage. So you digest it and you get comfortable with it. And then it wears in where it's become the integration's already happened. And now it's possible stagnation. That to me is also a mirroring of how nature represents us, right? So we'll go through the same seasonal cycles. And I feel perhaps as human beings, we do that innately, but maybe that new growth isn't as long as what it is when we're excited about something. It can often get shortened or stifled because the fear of what that integration or comfortable level is going to look like, and then what the extension of that is going to look like, and how that can influence and change other aspects of our lives, our personal life, our professional life, our relationships, and so forth. So I think for some, I've seen that new growth space be really short.
We're comfortable with what we know, even if what we know hurts, right? And so, yeah, if we start to, and I've had this conversation, a similar conversation with two clients recently, where it's like there's been so much growth, and it's like, whoa, like I almost want to slow it down. And I'm very committed to a trauma-informed approach to healing. So there's not too much too soon. So we're, not biting off more than we can chew. And we're creating kind of a cadence that we can titrate, traumatic experience and
Yeah.
process it and grow in a way that's safe and sustainable. And there's the coach in me that also wants to give these nudges when I sense that there's enough nervous system regulation and capacity to keep
Yeah.
leaning into growth, right?
That's
And
right.
that's more of an art than a science.
Mm.
Um, but I do think it's very easy for our mind to kind of default again to comfort and what is familiar. And so, but I do think we reach a point where we gain some momentum, and
Mm-hmm.
then we can start to trust in that momentum because we've had enough experience that, oh, I came out on the other side and I'm okay. And actually, I'm
Mm-hmm.
more than okay. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so then that repair experience tells us that we can keep leaning in and we don't have to put our foot on the brakes. And, sometimes we may take our foot off the gas,
Yeah.
and it's totally fine. I mean, again, sometimes the nervous system is going to get activated and we're going to hit the brakes because we're just going to default to that. So
Right.
there's no right or wrong here. It's just developing more awareness of these mechanisms and locating more embodiment, a sense of being able to feel ourselves through it all, which then brings us more agency and presence and choice in it all. Okay, so yeah, I did choose to default to like, slam on the brakes, but now I can choose differently.
Yeah.
But then there's also kind of the awareness of why we put our foot on the brake, which,
Right.
we might not have had that awareness previously.
That's
So I
right.
feel each time we kind of default to the old pattern or to not leaning into the growth, we can gather a few more data points to piece together more of a cohesive understanding of our lived experience and of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree. And I would add to that how crucial it is for anybody to build a team, build external individuals around you, not family, not friends, because that could be a little biased of pushing you out of your comfort zone, but individuals who you can lean on, who are going to support you, but hold space for you as you go through this uncomfortable journey of unraveling some of this ickiness that is defaulted,
Yeah.
right?
And that's the type of container I'm holding for clients and students where we're holding space for the parts of us that just need to be held, and sometimes that need to just fall apart, and trauma is often too much too soon. So healing is helping slow things down so we can be with what historically was overwhelming.
Right.
But the more we do that, then the more we can, you know, move forward in our life. And so it's kind of that balancing act of slowing down to be with what was too much so then we can move forward and be with more and more,
Yeah.
without it being too much. And so, um, and that that can feel kind of like fits and starts and a little jerky at the, stop, go in the beginning. And then we kind
Yeah.
of starts to smooth itself out and we start to kind of feel into that cadence and also know that there's kind of a cycle of expansion and contraction that's just a part of life and a part of this dance,
Yeah.
and have less aversion and attachment to either. And so kind of, oh, yep, here's some of the contraction. But if I allow myself to just feel the contraction, then that can serve as a springboard to expansion. We have to ebb to flow. Like,
Absolutely. But doing it from a conscious space has a whole different outcome
yeah,
than just
exactly.
falling into it or being pushed into it because your external environment's pushing it on you. Has a whole different perspective.
And I 100% agree with the sentiment around having support, right? We're not meant to do life alone as social
Mhm.
creatures. And in terms of trauma, we certainly can't heal imprints that have, you know, traumatic imprints that have left the residue of alienation and isolation. We can't bring those into the light and back into wholeness in isolation, right? That
Yeah.
so much healing happens relationally. And so, yeah, having the support, a teacher, a mentor, a therapist, a healer,
Mhm.
a coach, all of the above.
All of the above. I agree, all of the above, because there are multiple facets of us, and each of them need to be addressed. Yeah, absolutely. In addition to what you have shared, what are your intentions with the offerings that you have, with your own journey, the intentions of your craft?
Yeah. You know, Meeting people where they're at, is really important to me, but then holding a vision of what's possible. So then carrying kind of that, holding that tension of that arc of transformation.
Mm.
Most people find me because they're suffering from anxiety, depression, chronic pain, which is all often symptomatic of unresolved trauma.
Mhm.
Um, and so again, that's the pain that they're motivated to get out of. Um, but through the work, and some people are coming to me because they definitely see the value of the spiritual component of, the practices I share and teach. But again, many are coming more to resolve the pain and then come through the journey and realize that there's a deeper component of a spiritual practice at play here, which is really then, speaking into the resonance of their heart and their place and their purpose. And so I think, people, the transformation is that of locating more freedom and truth and
Mhm.
power, but a big reframe around power, because I think with trauma, there's often been an abuse of power, or,
Mhm. Mhm.
power has been hijacked, or we have very um, negative concepts of power based on the abuse and manipulation of power that's often modeled in the world.
Right.
So, kind of reframing power as a place of presence, not a power over, but a power with and for. So, more of a generative power, um, and how that helps people locate more aliveness and more courage, right? To just
Yeah.
live in live in presence and let that presence guide.
Yeah.
And so I do think that is an arc from pain to purpose. um, but even still, a lot of folks come to me, especially the leaders that come to me, are very purpose driven, but and they're made of purpose, but they're lacking the fulfillment, right? The
Mhm.
burnout and emptiness that we can lose ourselves in our purpose. So kind of locating ourselves in our
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so crucial because, yeah, we might be motivated and driven, especially from a leader perspective, to get to that why that is fueling us, but taking care of that process in between, the journey, the body, the your own relationship day to day is so crucial, and it gets put on the checklist with ease, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the leaders I work with have built something really beautiful and meaningful, whether it's a platform, a company, um, but they've reached a point where they realize that what they've built has been driven by a trauma response. And
Mhm.
again, honoring that it helped them build this thing, but if they don't find a new way to sustain it, it may, crash and burn.
Right.
And so that's the shift, teaching the nervous system how to land and just
Yeah.
helping us reside in ourselves in a way that's, yeah, sustaining.
Yeah. Oh, very interesting work and very powerful work at that too. So, what's next for you with the work that you're doing? You have developed a prism um, analogy, I guess, or a process.
Hmm.
What what else is next for Greg in supporting individuals through their journey of healing and leadership?
Yeah, the Prisma course kind of takes all the disparate pieces that I've kind of drawn upon for my own healing and puts them into kind of like an owner's manual for mental, emotional, spiritual health. And so there's a
Mm,
trauma and neuroscience roadmap because I find a lot of us come to healing and we can be in therapy for years, but not really know the lay of the land, not really know where we're headed. And
mhm.
not that we're all, headed back home to ourselves, but having a map to help articulate that. And
Yeah.
then the pillars of my system are kind of the drop pins on that map, which kind of help us orient to kind of, yeah, where we're at, where we're headed, and just some kind of meaningful mile markers along the way. Uh,
Mhm.
and then the somatic and mindfulness-based practices I offer, yeah, are kind of like the built-in GPS. So we kind of
Nice.
don't get lost on the way. And then, you know, the energy medicine component is the vehicle where a lot of trauma we can't think or talk our way through. And
Mhm.
so energy medicine really helps to kind of work that through the cells and the tissues and how trauma has imprinted in our physiology,
Yes.
how it's imprinted in our physical body, and how that,
Mhm.
really impacts our immune function and our circulation and our lymph and then starts to manifest in all sorts of health issues.
Mhm.
So yeah, really supporting folks in that container which people can access,
Yeah.
and have support from all these different tools, wisdoms, and
Beautiful.
frameworks.
Beautiful. Well, it seems like you're doing a lot of magical work. Obviously, having been through your own journey of 10 years of chronic healing and pain, and having been around the world at a number of spots to reclaim and heal parts of yourself that have been challenged because of this beautiful world that we live in, and the society and the systems that are created around us can take a toll, can
Yeah.
take a toll. But the gift that you're offering individuals to support them on this healing journey through the physical symptoms are really crucial. So thank you for sharing your gifts, sharing your story, and being open and being receptive to generously giving to others from a different level. Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I think, and I'll just leave it at, for me, I just reached a point where once my cup was overflowing, it's like, who am I not to share this work? And
Yeah,
especially in the time we are living in today,
yeah,
everything's coming to the surface. We're seeing all of the wounding in, both the collective and the individual. And so
Yep.
if there were ever a time for healing, it's now, and we have to see it to heal it. So I look at right now, as troubling as it may appear, as a really potent time for transformation and healing.
Very much. Absolutely. The best that we can do is at least put out our hand to those who are willing to take it. And if they're willing to take it, you can guide them on that process. If they're not, then maybe they'll come back around and they'll be ready next time. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Greg, for a delicious conversation.
Thank you.
I'm Naranjan, and you've been listening to Master of Your Crafts podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and join me next week for another episode. Thank you for listening.